Get the recording going, and in just a second, we'll be live on Facebook as well. Okay, let's see here. So there we go. We are live on Facebook now. Welcome everybody to Healing Conversations. This is a space founded on the principles of unconditional love and acceptance of self and others. This is a space where people can come, be as they are, feel free to be vulnerable to express themselves. And really, that's the foundation of this space, to be able to express yourself, to let go of things that no longer serve you, to recontextualize the stories that no longer work, and to shift that narrative from disempowerment to empowerment. And more importantly, to love yourself, love others, and hold space to be compassionate with yourself, because we're all doing the best we can. And this is a space where we have wonderful guest speakers like the one today. Mark Rodriguez is going to be sharing his story, giving us his perspective. I feel like his perspective is one that helps us put life into perspective. A lot of times we get really down on ourselves, and what we're experiencing is the size of a mustard seed, but yet we make it as big as the size of a mountain. And so Mark really, I would say, if anybody dealt with the size of a mountain problem, an obstacle in life, it was Mark. A lot of times we make our little situations explode into big situations because we focus on the thing that we're resisting, we don't want, and it expands. But Mark has a story of resilience and perseverance. And so we're so excited to have him here with us today. But before we get started, I always like to help us arrive. Just kind of simmer it down a little bit. Arrive in our bodies, kind of let go of the day stressors. And so to do that, I invite those that are in a safe space, that are not driving. If you're driving, do not close your eyes. But if you're able to, close your eyes and breathe in. Take a deep breath and breathe it all in and hold it. And embrace yourself and say, I love you. And release the breath. Now take another deep breath and hold it. And say, I'm doing the best I can. And release the breath. Now take another deep breath and hold it. And say, I accept you. And release the breath. Now open your eyes and arrive. Let's be here. Let's be present. Let's listen to Mark as he takes us into the topic, loving yourself enough not to be your own worst enemy. Now, a little bit about Mark before he gets started on his story. Mark is a two-time double lung transplant recipient and the world's only working stonemason after lung transplants. He brings a message of resilience, perseverance, and great faith. Embracing a warrior spirit and a mindset, he has been able to achieve the unheard of and beat the worst of odds, a double transplant. Wow. By choosing to always fight and never quit, he has removed losing from the equation. His belief is warriors don't lose because they always fight. They don't give up. He lives by the words, and I quote him, the only time you truly lose in life is when you quit. There is no coming back from that. And I'll repeat that. I think this is so important. The only time you truly lose in life is when you quit. There is no coming back from that. Now, he has come back from 3 deathbeds, 2 transplants, even death on the operating table, and the darkest places he has ever seen, to return to his craft and career. Now he's an author, an international speaker, and transformational empowerment coach. and he's here to tell you, and I quote, if he can do this, everybody can do this, no matter what. And I change this a little bit, no matter what the circumstance. Welcome, Mark. We're all ears.
Thank you for having me here this evening. It's my honor to be here. My topic tonight is a very important one. In this life, we live, in this world we live in, it's hard. It's hard out there. There's a lot going on working against us. And so it's important that we never work against ourselves. Now, yes, I do have quite a crazy story. But the reason for that story is that I never took care of myself. See, it wasn't the silicosis fibrosis that led to my downfall that I was diagnosed with in 2010. It started happening long before that when I came down with Superman disease. That's the one where we think we're invincible and nothing can hurt us. Well, Superman is a comic book character. He's not a real man. And real things affect real men and women. And when we live in this world that's very tough, when we don't place self-care as a priority, we start to forget about self-love. And when we forget about those two things, we're going to land up in some very tough situations that will require some hard work to attain the healing that we need to enable that growth to happen. See, when something happens in your life, some kind of trauma or adversity or maybe something financial or marital, life interrupted comes at you in many forms, through our demons, through many different ways. But when something happens to us and we don't deal with it, we can't move forward. We're stuck. We're stuck in this place. And until we deal with it, then we're going to have a real problem trying to move forward. I'm trying to get a little bit of light here because it got a little darker faster than I thought it would. I don't know if that helps. It's not helping my eyes, but
You look fine.
Because the problem is that when it comes to self-care, nobody's going to come to your door and knock on your door and ask you, are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating right? Are you drinking water? Are you resting adequately? Are you meditating? Are you in prayer? Are you, there's so many different things that are encompassed in self-care. For me, one thing that I've added into my self-care was doing breath work. I've had 2 double lung transplants, so this was a perfect fit for my self-care. And what does my self-care look like? Well, I wake up in the morning, I do my meditations, I pray, I get in my Bible, and then I do breath work. And then after that, I do a workout, about a 30, 45-minute workout. Well, I never used to do these things. When I was in the middle of my career, I would wake up, get ready, and give myself to the world. Well, giving myself to the world like that, and not taking care of myself, was very irresponsible. And it led me to my deathbed. In 2010, I was diagnosed with silicosis fibrosis. I was sick for a year, on oxygen full time. And then I got a phone call to go get my first transplant on October 10th of 2010. And, I walked out of that hospital in 8 days with just a paper mask, no oxygen or nothing. Everything, when it was a tough surgery though. It was a 12-hour surgery, one that required the surgeon to use a hammer and chisel to remove my lungs, which was very ironic because these were two of the tools that I used to build my career. But I made a huge mistake because I was not operating in safety. I was operating in ignorant machismo, and I wasn't taking care of myself. Yes, I was strong. Yes, I was tough, but it didn't mean I was okay. It just meant I was tough enough to survive. And then a little bit before I hit almost 4 years of my first transplant, I had a fall that caused a pulmonary embolism. Well, that put me on my deathbed worse than ever. Something that should have killed me within days, I was now getting close to battling with for 6 months. And in that time was when I discovered how strong my mind was and how strong my soul was, because my body was not. I was 120 pounds. I was risking cardiac arrest every time I went 15 feet to the restroom. My oxygen would drop into the low 60s. My heart rate would go into the high 150s. But every time God found a way to get me back to that bed and found a way to keep waking me up in this fight. Well, on January 23rd, about 8 o'clock in the evening, I felt this sensation that my body was floating away. And I hung on to the blankets and for dear life, literally. I mean, white knuckles. And then about a minute later, it happened again. Well, maybe a couple minutes after that, the phone rings. And in between that, my daughter had called my mom and said, "Grandma, something's wrong with my dad. He won't tell me what's going on." And, this poor girl had a front row seat to my death for far too long. And I didn't want to make it worse. So, I was kind of trying to protect her in a way, but she was too smart for all that. And she knew something was up. My mom came in and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I don't know, Mom. I'm just really tired, really, really weak." She says, "Well, you haven't eaten anything all day." So she was just putting the food away. They had eaten dinner and it was still warm. So she brought me a bowl and I said my prayers, and I was literally right here when the phone rang. And it was a hospital. "Get to the hospital right now. We have your lungs." And the first question they asked me was, "When was the last time you ate?" Now, you talk about God's timing. If I would have taken that bite, they wouldn't have been able to do it. And that would have been my last day. When I got to the hospital, the first thing I said was to the doctor, I said, "Doc, yeah, I'm getting this weird feeling, man, like my body's floating away. What's going on?" And he looked at me real shocked and his eyes were huge. And he said, "That's not your body floating away, Mark. You're in your last hour of life. I need you to fight harder than you ever have. You've been fighting this long. We're going to fight for you. I just need you to keep fighting." And so that's what we did. We got in there and we started fighting. But my fight ended for a little while on that cold steel operating table. And that's when I got that's when I got a front row seat for the battle of my soul. And the things I remembered from when I left this earth were, I'll never forget them. I'll never forget them. And when Jesus told me I wasn't supposed to be there, it wasn't my time, I had to go back and there was more work to do, then I imagine that's when they shocked me and brought me back and put me in the coma. Well, when I could finally talk, I wanted to tell everyone about it. Then they, seemed to think that I was hallucinating, but I told them, "Look, I've done this before. a hallucination is me riding a city bus with Jimi Hendrix, Johnny Cash, uh, Janis Joplin, and Roy Orbison, and we're having a jam session. And the bus driver turns around and says, "Hey, it sounds great, guys. Keep it going." Except that the bus driver is in full uniform, but he's a skeleton. That was an hallucination. What I experienced was very real. And I guess, I was in a coma for 9 days, hospital for 30. I finally came out, but it was rough. It was very, very rough. And eventually, I got back into the world and I was able to start doing things for myself, but that didn't mean I was healed. And that's where I made the mistake. I was like, okay, God, I've been to hell and back twice. Use me now. But that's not the way it works. There's a process that I wasn't even aware of. And not so much that I was trying to circumvent that process, but I wasn't even really aware of it. And that process is that when a trauma happens to you, uh, first of all, you have to take accountability for how and why you're there. Because if you're blaming other people for how and why you're there, you're never going to move to the next phase, which is healing. So everything starts with accountability. And then you can move to healing. And the healing is so necessary because you cannot move out of that stuck space until you heal. Because if you try, you're gonna the same thing's gonna keep coming up, and you're eventually gonna have to deal with it. So you can't run from these things. You have to turn around and dig your 10 toes in the ground and say, okay, I'm not running. Let's deal with this thing. Let's do this. And when that healing takes place, and it's very painful, I'm not going to lie to you. And there's a lot of people on this call that know exactly what I'm talking about. That's when the growth takes place. And that growth can't take place without the other things happening. It's like walking up a set of steps. You can't skip a couple steps because you might bust your mouth when you trip and fall on the steps you're trying to get to by skipping. And so if there's no healing, there's no growth. If there's no growth, then there's no elevation. And if you have not been elevated, then God cannot use you as one of his tools in his toolbox. And then you're still stuck. And it's a hard place to be when days are passing and the calendar flips to the next month and you're still in the same place because you're not dealing with the things that have put you there. And a lot of times we want to say, well, it happened because of this or that person or whatever, but I'm always reminded of something my dad taught me about the tools of the weak. And that's making excuses, blaming others, wallowing in self-pity, or complaining. Now, if you use those tools of the weak, the only thing you will accomplish is weakening yourself. And being that we're only as strong as our weakest weakness, if we're not willing to be a constant work in progress in an ever-changing world, that's how we disappear. That's why we become invisible or fall through the cracks or become a statistic. And the thing about loving yourself is, and loving yourself enough to not be your own worst enemy, is that this world that we live in, it's a very rough world. It's very tough. And the only thing we're guaranteed is to get our butts kicked. Let's be honest. This world is going to kick our butts. And nobody gets out of this thing unscathed without falling down, without taking some kind of damage. And certainly nobody has ever gotten out of life alive. And nobody ever will. So having said that, if that's what we're guaranteed, we have to really change our mindset from the person that keeps getting in line to participate in our own butt kicking. And we do that in many different ways. We do that by operating in self-sabotage, negative self-talk, negative thoughts about ourselves, which makes us move negatively or puts us in a negative box. And it's hard to live in a round world that spins in a circle when you're stuck in a negative box. Or we feed our fears and doubts to the point that they become monsters and we become unable to function properly. Well, we can't feed our fears and doubts, and then when they become monsters, we become the why me guy. Like, why does these things always happen to me? Or why do I have such bad luck? Or why is the world against, that's not the answer. That is actually a great way to waste your energy becoming the why me guy. And then amplifying the negatives. There's many times where we turn this little negative thing and we just turn it into this giant drama or mountain of negativity. And many times we go through this life and we say, oh, I believe in myself. I believe in myself. But then we turn around and operate in self-sabotage. Well, those two things, they don't go together and they never will. Those two things will never, ever match up and pair up and do anything productive. They'll never go together. I mean, I say this all the time. It's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. No, a peanut butter and tuna fish sandwich. Those two things will never go together, right? Who would even there's people on here right now that kind of even getting that look like, ooh, that's gross, right? But isn't it more gross how we beat ourselves up? That's, the only way I had enough for my fight was to rid my life of all these things I'm talking about. And then I was able to raise my vibration just by not doing something. And having made these changes in my life and put in this hard work to make these changes in my life, honestly, I would rather eat that sandwich than go back to living the way I used to. When I was always mad, when I was always, frustrated, or when I was stressed out, and then I would lead to this immense sadness or depression. Well, these are 4 things that I want to talk about right now. These things are all choices. And I want everyone to understand this clearly. They are not automatic steps in the process when something occurs. These are all choices. We choose these things. But then we walk around wondering why we feel so bad. Oh, I feel horrible. Oh, I'm so sick and tired. Oh, I'm stressed out. And we say these things, and then our body is reacting to what we're saying because our body's always listening, and the universe is always listening. The thing with our body and the universe, though, is that they can't tell the difference between a wish and a command as opposed to our feelings or emotions. Okay, so if I say something like an example, my knee hurts, all my body hears is, oh, you want your knee to hurt? Okay. And then you're wondering why it hurts worse now. Or the universe, like, I'm broke, I can't afford that. Your friend might ask you, hey, you want to go out? I'm broke, I can't afford to do that. Well, all the universe hears is, oh, you want to be broke? And you want me to show you more things you can't afford? Okay, here, boom. Whether we refuse, whether we accept to believe that or not, or we refuse to believe it or not, the universe and our body are always listening. So we have to be very mindful of our words. And if we say we love ourselves, then we have to stop speaking in negativity because that directly affects our body the most. Even if we're talking about so-and-so over there who has you all mad and you're like, I can't stand that guy. And you know what? He's a bad, or, you might say something about him, maybe even toss in some spicy language, a couple of call him out of his name a couple of times. The problem with those things is your subconscious does not know who that guy is. He thinks your subconscious thinks you're talking about yourself. But then we turn around and we say, well, I love myself. Or the other thing, I love my family. I love my friends. I love God. I love Jesus. I love this and that. But if you don't fully and completely love yourself, then the version of love that you're giving to everybody else is this watered down Kool-Aid version of it. And if you say you love God and then you bashing yourself, that part that God said, I made you in my image, that wasn't for advertising to sell, you on reading the Bible. He wasn't trying to convince you of something. He was telling you the truth. So when you say, I am dumb, or I am worthless, or I am ugly, or I am fat, or something like that, when you put something negative on the end of your I am, you're not only are you talking to yourself, but you're talking to what God put in you of him. So not only are you speaking curses on your life, but you're speaking the wrong way on your creator. Because God said, I am the great I am. So we have to understand the power in our words. And we have to understand that our words lead to our actions. But before all that, it's our thoughts is where it all begins. First we think it, then we speak it, and then we move in action. And then that becomes our habits. And then that becomes our character. And then that determines our vibration. And when we don't have the correct vibration, I think we've all been there at some point. We're a mess. We're either sick or we're scattered or we're lost. And the sun is electric. The earth is magnetic and we're in between. So we're very much electromagnetic beings. And so we have to operate at a certain vibration. Because when it gets too low, that's when the weird things latch onto us and we get sick, or those low vibrational demons, or just a lot of problems. And then the higher we vibrate, the easier things get for us and the more different higher frequencies we can tap into. But listen, if you're beating yourself up and you're not loving yourself or loving others, because the energy that you have for yourself, that's the energy you're going to have for everyone around you. So if you're not loving yourself, then that love that you're going to give to everyone else, it's going to be a little bit funky. It's going to be a little bit weird. And it's not the 100% best version of it either. And if you can't love yourself, how can you love anyone else? If you can't care for yourself, how can you care for anyone else? And so, not in a selfish way, but it's very important that you place that as a priority, because nobody's going to come and do that work for you. Nobody did it for me. And then I was laying in a hospital room and the doctor came in and said, Mark, you're dying. The only thing that will save you is a double lung transplant, but it's a long process and more than likely you're not going to make it that long. So the doubt started from the very first visits I had from a doctor while laying in the hospital. The thing about that is fear and doubt. Yeah, you could feed them. Yes, they'll become monsters. And yes, they will control your every move. But if you can do that, then you can also do the opposite, which is starve them. And if you starve them, then eventually they'll die. And then you bury them. Make sure you bury them. Right? See, when I think about fear and doubt, people always ask me, were you scared? No, I've never really been scared of a lot of things. I've lived a pretty crazy life too. So I've been in some very hairy situations that involved guns and knives and me getting shot at and stabbed and jumped. And a gun being held to my head and those kind of things. But the scariest feeling I ever had was when I couldn't breathe. I was terrified. All those other things paled in comparison. And so when you don't take care of yourself and you're not breathing, you know, what happens when we get all stressed out or we get mad? We hold our breath, right? And then that vein starts popping out right here. We've all done it, right? But we have to breathe. In these tough situations, we have to breathe. When we're up against something that's making us feel really small and it seems really big, we have to breathe. When we're facing a situation that seems impossible, we have to breathe. That's how we invite God into our experience to help us. You know, I mean, I truly believe that. But when we're not loving ourselves, we make everything so much harder. Everything's so much more difficult. And if that is the case, that life's going to beat us up and the world's going to beat us up, we should be preparing ourselves for these battles, not weakening ourselves before we enter them. And a lot of it really has to do with our thoughts and our words. If we want to change our mindset, we have to change our thoughts, which will change our words, will change the way we move in the world, and that will change our mindset. Now, you know, I speak about this. Everything I speak about and everything that I teach, I've either been guilty of or I've worked myself out of. So everything I'm speaking about, it's coming from right here. And I hope it hits you right in the same place because it's as authentic and genuine as it gets. I don't have to regurgitate somebody else's stuff. The experience I've been through is a very unique one. But we all have a version of the unheard of. And we can all tell it loud and clear, but we have to rid our lives of all these negative things that are holding us back. And this also includes holding on to things from the past, grudges, uh, hatred towards somebody that a relationship was broken. It takes a lot of energy to hate, even just to say it. It takes a lot of energy to complain. It takes a lot of energy to feel sorry for yourself. And when you stop doing these things, you see that you have a lot of energy to do powerful things, positive things, things that will make a difference, not only in your life, but those around you. And maybe even people that you don't know that may see you operating a different way, a new way. And then it inspires them to make those changes as well. And so when we make that conscious choice to heal and put in and make the commitment to put in that work, however hard it is, however painful it is, however much it hurts, we have to know that it's leading us to a good place. And when it's at its hardest, you just know that you're about to make your breakthrough. So don't ever quit. Don't even just take it out of the equation. And when you remove quitting from the equation, you also remove losing. See, I don't like that word. I don't like that word loser or losing. I feel like, you know, this is my feeling. The only time in life you lose is when you quit because there's no coming back from that. The rest of the time, you're just pivoting. You're retooling your game plan. You're finding a different avenue to the greatness that's meant for you, that God has for you. Or you're just taking a different approach. And you're changing because it's an ever-changing world and it's an ever-changing road. And one thing that we have to remember is that on these rough roads, these roads to recovery or these roads to redemption or whatever road we're on that's super difficult, we can't forget that just because it's a difficult road, there's still a possibility for it to be a beautiful ride. And that just means that we have to slow it down. You know, we get on these difficult roads and we want to go 100 miles an hour to get off it as soon as we can. But more often than not, we end up on the side of the road broken down. And so sometimes we just have to slow it down. When it's coming at us hard and it's a rough road, we have to slow it down. We can recognize the obstacles coming before us. We can see the potholes. We can see the obstacles. So we can either go around them a little bit or slow down. But when you slow down, that's when you're able to notice the beautiful things around you and the beautiful parts of the experience. Because like the signals that we send to our bodies with our words are very important, because you could either say I'm challenged or I'm stressed. Now this is what the body does. You say I'm stressed out, the body reacts, oh my God, starts freaking out, right? So everybody knows what stress does to your body. It makes you very sick. So that's your body's reaction to you saying, I'm stressed. That's the confirmation for your body to start freaking out. Now, there's a flip side to every word. My flip side to that word is challenged. So if I say, I'm very challenged right now, my body's like, wait, what? There's a challenge? Come on, let's do this. I'm ready. Let's go. See, it changes how my body reacts. So my body's not freaking out now. Now my body's ready for like whatever's coming. And that changes the energy from negative to positive. That gives you a chance to harness the power of whatever it is that you're trying to do when you complete that task. A lot of it is in our words. And I have this exercise. It's a very good healing exercise for people who are having trouble moving out of certain spaces. And it has to do with breathing and movement and speaking. And so I take some deep breaths, I open myself up, I do some big circles, and then whatever it is I don't want, I push it out of my body with a very hard, aggressive exhale. And then whatever I want in my body, the flip side to that thing, I bring it into my body with a very deep inhale. As I say the word, I'm breathing it and pulling it in. So an example would be fear, courage, weakness, strength. And it can be anything. It could be hate, love, anger, peace. There's a flip word to everything. So whatever you're struggling with, find the flip word and then implement this exercise, because you're breathing it in, you're moving it in, you're breathing it out, you're moving it out, whatever you don't want. And this sets your body in a motion that it understands we're ridding it of something bad, something we don't need, something we don't want, and we're adding in something that we do need, something we do want. And see, anytime, some of the hardest work that we'll ever do as adults is look at ourselves introspectively. That's hard. It's hard to look at ourselves and admit what's wrong or recognize what's wrong with us. But it's even harder to move in action after that. And so I have this teaching that I do, that when you're sick and tired and you're ready to make that change, and I have the people that I work with sit down and make a list. What's good about me? What's bad about me? And then those things that are bad about you, you figure out what you want to throw in the trash. It's gone. We remove it. First, we recognized it, then we remove it. The, the thing with that is, though, is when you remove something, it leaves a void. And that void can create a vacuum and very easily pull in something even worse than what you just got rid of. So when you recognize and remove, it's absolutely necessary to replace with something of value and worth. That's key. It's like remodeling a house. You know, maybe you look around your house and it's kind of set up still like the 70s, and you got the green tub and the green sink in the bathroom and the formica countertops, and you got that little square wood tile floors, or maybe even no, who knows, right? But you don't like it. So what do you do? Say, okay, let's do a remodel. So you demo it out, you remove it. Well, you can't just leave it like that, because then the bugs and the snakes and the animals think nobody's living there, and then they want to move in. So you have to replace. That's where you put in the new floor, the new countertops, the new fixtures, the new appliances, the new sink and tub. And then you're happy with it, right? But just like a house, and the work's never done. Like us, our house, our work should never be done. We should always be willing to be a constant work in progress. The world is ever changing. If we stop changing, how is that going to work out for us? Because we won't stay the same. We'll be here and everyone else is elevating, and we think we're staying here, but we're really not. We're dropping as everyone else is elevating. And a very smart person told me this one time after my transplant. He said, Mark, if you're not doing what you love in life, you're not living. He was making sure that I didn't go in my house and become a germaphobe and not have adventures and not experience life. And so he made this very clear to me. My great friend, James Watson. He said, Mark, if you're not doing what you love in life, you're not living. And if you're not learning, you're also not living. And he was a double lung transplant recipient. He was my lung brother, and he has soon gone on to the next phase of his journey. But the very profound words that he gave me, I never forget. Those are some of the best words a friend has ever given me, because I live by those words. You have to keep learning if you want to keep living. You got to do what you love, or else you might as well just go kick the hamster off the wheel and say, here, hold my beer, buddy. Watch me do your job better than you. And nobody wants that. And nobody wants to live in a life where they're stuck and the calendar keeps flipping, but you're still stuck in the same place month after month, maybe year after year. And some of us even have gone decade after decade. And I speak from experience when I say this. It's a tough place to look back on. It's when you look back at your life and you're like, I lost all those years because I wasn't willing to face life interrupted, or I wasn't willing to face my demons or my adversities, or deal with my traumas. You lose time. And that's time is our biggest resource. We always say we have time, but we don't. That's a lie. So stop saying things like, oh, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. Thing about time is that the past only serves to learn from and be grateful for. It's not a billy club to be beating ourselves up with over the head or over our heart. And the future, we don't even know if those days have our name on them. So what? We need to stop worrying about them so much. Stop fretting about the future so much. Your name might not be even on those days. So what do we have? We have today. We have the present. We have right now. God wakes us up in the morning, and we all really only get 24 hours at a time, right? Doesn't matter if we're healthy or sick or rich or poor, we only get 24 at a time. So just thank God for that. Do the most we can with it. You know, they call it the present for a reason because it's a huge gift. Every day we get's a gift. And the harder days that we get are the bigger gifts. Don't ever forget that. Those are the days that show us that God has got us through 100% of our worst days. Could have been our last, but they weren't. And he's perfect. Like he's got a perfect record. 100%. There's no record better than that. And so when we start having a bad day, we could say, you know, hey, relax, slow down. You got through your worst day. This isn't even close to that. You're going to be all right. And sometimes we let our mind run away with itself, and we have to do better. If we say we love ourselves, then we should care about ourselves. That means we should respect ourselves. Having said all those three things, then we should have no problem disciplining ourselves. And if that means changing our words, changing our thoughts, changing our actions for a better life, to be able to change our mindset, to have experience better days and accomplish greater things, shouldn't we be willing to do that? I mean, if we really love ourselves that much, we should be willing to go through some hard work and disciplining ourselves and even a little bit of pain to get to the great places, because nobody's going to come and just hand you all this on a silver platter. When you got life interrupted hitting you over the head, like it did me, it hit me harder than any hammer I've ever struck my chisel with. Nobody was there coming to say, hey, I'll do the work for you. Here's all the answers on a silver platter. No, we have to look inside of ourselves. And when we do, and when we approach these things a certain way, instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, and we experience those struggles and that suffering, it leads us to our strengths and talents and skills and gifts that we never even knew we had. But if we would have quit, if we would have gotten weak and become the coward and quit, we would have never discovered those great things about us. And I want to say this, and this is very important, and I say this all the time, and I need everybody to understand this. God doesn't make losers and quitters. Society does. Our bad habits, our behaviors, and our excuses do. Yes, every day, all the time. God only makes winners and warriors, and we're all those. And don't ever forget that you're one of those. So in your toughest times, when you're questioning yourself, don't do that. Don't do that. There'll be thousands of people in your life doubting you. Don't ever become one of them, ever. And when it comes to fear, there's something that's mentioned in the Bible 365 times. It's fear not. Wait, 365 times? That's how many times there are, how many days there are in a year. Wait a minute. So you could go to your Bible every day and find a different passage that tells us we don't have to be scared. Yes, that part. We don't have to be scared, and we don't have to doubt ourselves. So stop feeding your fears and doubts. My fears and doubts, this is what they get. They don't get leftovers. They don't get crumbs, scraps. They don't get a whiff or sniff. If I'm talking about what I'm cooking, they don't even get to listen. They get to die. And then I get to bury them, because if I don't make sure that happens, and listen to this very clearly, when you don't make sure this happens, they won't make sure it happens with you. They will start with your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, and eventually you. So are those, when you're feeding your fears and doubts this big old all-you-can-eat buffet, and you're just like, here, have some more, have some more. Think about it. They're robbing you of everything that you've ever dreamed of, everything you've ever set as a goal. They're robbing you of your power. but you're allowing them to because you're the one that built them up by feeding them. That dream is your dream. Don't let anybody ever chase you off your dream. That's your dream. That dream will never wake you up. That dream will never chase you. You have to wake yourself up and chase it. And when you catch it, make it pay up. Say, I want mine now, right? I worked for it. And you have to be good to yourself in order to get to those places where you have that opportunity. You wanted to say something? I think you were trying to cut me off. I get it all. I get going, and you got to jump in every once in a while.
No, no, no. Thank you for sharing so much. We got about 9 minutes to go. Maybe if there's anything else you want to say, we could open it up for some Q&A, see if anybody has any questions. There was
Yeah,
so many gold nuggets. I was taking notes throughout everything you were saying and resonating with the message that you have here. Lots of awareness you're bringing to the table and appreciation to really like, what are we doing here, right? Are we? I love what you said about the Billy Club analogy about the past. The past is to learn from and to be grateful for, but it's not a Billy Club to beat ourselves over with, right? Like that's so beautiful. I'm gonna use that if it's okay. That's gonna
yeah,
be part of of how I use that because it really puts into perspective, right? What's going on here? Let's be present. Let's be in a state of gratitude. What a gift, especially from you. Look at the journey you've been on. You really are able to put everything into laser focus of what a gift life is because you've been literally on your deathbed and you are here to share this message, which is a message that many people are putting out there, but it's so hard for us, right? Like we're doing everyday life. We get caught up in we stub our toe. That toe becomes this big old thing, right? And then we're beating ourselves up with that billy club because we stubbed our toe last year, right? I mean, and I'm exaggerating, obviously. But anyways, Q&A. This will be the time where you can just jump in, raise your hand. You want to just jump in, start talking. Looks like Cheryl. You're muted. Can't hear you.
There I go. Okay. So you were talking before about making a list of what's good about you, what's bad about you, recognizing it and then removing it, and that you have to replace it with something of value.
yes.
Can you give me an example of what the thing of value would be?
Well, so let's say you have a problem with your temper,
Mhm.
and anger puts you in bad situations, and you want to remove that.
Mhm.
So what do you replace it with? What's the flip side of anger?
Pleasantry, happiness.
Peace.
Mhm.
Yes. So we have to do the things that will create that within us. See, the thing about peace and joy and happiness and love, we, we're always looking for it everywhere in external sources. We have to create it within ourselves. And when we can create all those things within ourselves, wherever we go, we remain in that state. We remain in peace and joy and love and happiness. Even if we're in a tough situation, if it's in us, it's with us because we take it everywhere we go.
Right.
So that's the important part. That's if if I have no patience, then I have to get rid of that part about me and then bring in the part that will help me develop patience that I need to deal with difficult situations.
Mhm. Thank
And
you.
whatever it is that you're trying to get rid of, find the flip, and that's the thing you add.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We're in our Q&A part. Any questions, reflections? We have Mark here. He shared so much. Feel free to start talking. Raise your hand.
So while we're waiting for a question, I just want to let everyone know that it's very important to love yourself, to care for yourself, but it's also very important to have accountability with self. And that's how you rebuild trust because sometimes we say, oh, well, I don't trust that person anymore. They've let me down. But how many times have we let ourselves down? And then sometimes we don't trust ourselves. So we have to rebuild that within ourselves as well. And when we do that, it helps us rebuilding our relationships with other people. Like sometimes I have to do this all the time because my body's really beat up. And I have to tell my body, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry I didn't take care of you. I'm sorry I abused you. And your body's always listening. So your body will react. Your body will react. I was in a massage and my body was real tight, and the therapist said, "Man, you're really tight. Your body won't let go." And then I just said real calmly, I said, "She's our friend. She's just trying to help us. She's not trying to hurt us. Just let go and relax." And she freaked out because my body just immediately, it just let go. And she was able to do all the work she needed to do. And she was like, wow, I've never experienced that before. And I was like, well, your body's always listening to you, always. Even if you say, oh, my elbow hurts, trust me, your elbow's going to start hurting more. So instead of saying it hurts, saying, oh, my elbow's feeling better, the healing is taking place, or my healing is on the way. Say something else besides the thing that it is. And sometimes you're speaking in a delusional manner, but that's how we have to speak our way out of these difficult situations, is to actually speak the opposite, because that's what the universe and our body hears.
Appreciate you sharing that and have more gold nuggets. Again, just to remind what, oh, looks like we have your hand up. Go ahead and start speaking. You're muted, can't hear you. You're, there you are.
Hi, sorry everyone. Renee, I realized my name is on there, not on there. Thanks, Mark. I had my camera off, diligently writing notes. And would you say that like I have somebody that's really struggling with addiction, and would you say that I could just kind of like live what you're saying and use that positivity in those words to help influence the other person? And because a lot of times I hear how people say like, oh, you have to have self-love, and I'm starting to wonder, like, would self-respect kind of be a better way of doing it? Because self-love might be, oh, I'm getting a massage or a manicure, but self-respect might be I'm going for a run or I'm eating something healthy, along the lines of what you were saying about
More like
being
self-care.
trustworthy.
That's more like self-care. But the thing with addiction is that, and I do know some things about this from my own personal experiences, is that whenever we're using some kind of substance, whether it be alcohol or drugs, the majority of the time it's because we're hurting. Something has hurt us and we haven't healed from it. And we're not ready to take that next step. So we try to numb ourselves to make that feeling go away. Whatever's hurting us, whatever's harming us, we don't want to think about it. So we kind of numb ourselves. But that thing only grows. And then when you sober up, it comes back even harder. So uh, the thing is that when you're addressing addiction, you have to address the part that's the reason why they're doing it. Nobody just wakes up and says, I want to become a drug addict or an alcoholic. That's a gradual process, but over time, that becomes their coping mechanism when they're hurting. And it's very true when they say people who are hurting will end up hurting others. And then people who are healed will end up helping others heal. And so many times that person that we're hurting is ourselves initially, because we're not dealing with whatever's going on. And then the problem grows. That's when we start hurting people around us. And so we have to find that root thing and find out what trauma has taken place, or what is the cause that they need the healing. And then, of course, always being positive. But the thing that has helped me to help other people is just asking them, think about your worst day on this stuff. Do you want to ever experience that again? Because it could very easily happen with one bad choice. And I always think to myself, and that's what kind of got me out, like, when I said I want to make a change, I kept thinking to myself, when I would get weak or there would be a temptation, I would say to myself, you want to go back, think about your worst day on that. Think about your worst experience and really get it in your head. And then if more often than not, you're going to decide, no, I don't want to experience that. So we have to see, because if we can't stop being addicted, if we can't stop having that addictive personality, then we have to find new addictions. And we can definitely, if we found bad addictions, we can find good addictions, right? Things that will prosper us, things that will elevate us and raise our vibration. And then as we start doing these things, they just become our lifestyle and our habit, just like the negative way it comes. But these things will only continue to elevate us in our lives and our vibration. I don't know if I answered your question. I hope I got to it. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about it later, but
Give us a thumbs up.
my light went out, so I'm gonna move to a little bit of a more lit up place real quick, guys, as we finish up.
Okay, we are at the top, a little bit past the top of the hour. Thank you, Mark, so much for joining us and sharing such an important message. I mean, I to review everything you shared with us is so much, but really, like, just get back to the point here. The title, our topic for today was loving yourself enough not to be your own worst enemy. You shared so many gold nuggets. You talked about accountability, about healing, about growth. Really, it's a process. You said, what does this look like? Not beating the fears and doubts. You made a point of that, not to starve them to death and bury them. You said that many times. And so I feel like a lot of times, and I can also speak from personal experience, the fears and doubts, we start believing that. We start believing that, as one of my mentors calls it, that drunk monkey in your head. Matthew Ferry, he says, drunk monkey is out of control. When we're listening to these fears and doubts, and it's there to protect us. And a lot of times it wants to keep us in the same place because that's what it knows. It feels safe there. And sometimes being courageous, you talked about that. Self-care, self-love. What does that look like? Being mindful. You shared so many gold nuggets with us. One of the things that I think was the overall arching message that you have for us is about lightness. I feel in life, and that's one message with Healing Conversations. We get so heavy with life, right? We get so heavy with ourselves. There's so much judgment. We're our own worst enemy. Like you said loving yourself enough not to be your own worst enemy. And I truly see in myself that I was, and there's still times that I am my worst enemy. There's no worser than ourselves. We create our own suffering with the narrative that we're choosing to disempower ourselves with instead of empowering ourselves. So I like to quote something from one of the one of my mentors. He wasn't actual. I never met him, but I read one of his books, and his energy's really, really nice. His name is Ram Dass, and he said, "We're just here walking each other home." Mark said that this is a thing that we're not going to get out alive, right? We live like we have all the time in the world, and we kept, like you said, we keep putting things off that are good for us because we're living in fear and doubt. But what would happen if we do the reverse? If we, like Mark, courageously live in the now, be present, and release the heaviness. Because the heaviness, like you said, that billy club of the past, what's up with that? Why do we do that to ourselves? We are our own worst enemy. Or we worry about the future that may never even come, right? It's not about the destination, right? This is a pretty easy thing that everybody remembers. And I think it's so applicable. I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. It's about the journey. It's about right now. How do I feel? What do I want to experience? We get to create that in the here and now, not someday. It's very easy to say, but again, our own worst enemy lives right here in the mind if we allow it to be. So let's be like Mark and let's starve that guy. Even though he has our best interest at heart, he doesn't know any better. He's like my mentor says, this drunk monkey that's out of control that sometimes we give the keys to our house to. Let's starve him. Let's not listen to him. And let's be okay. You know what, drunk monkey? Like my mentor says, okay, drunk monkey, thank you for trying to take care of me, but there's no danger here. No need to be afraid. Let's release the doubts and let's start loving on ourselves. And what does that look like for each and one every one of us, right?
When
So
you do that, it leads you to your greatness for sure. And one of the last things I want to leave you guys with is one of the things that has stuck with me the most on this journey is that life, some days it's like hugging a big giant teddy bear, right? This big giant teddy bear. You don't want to let it go. Those are those good days. You never want them to end, right? But then some days it's like hugging a cactus, right? But you can't be afraid of hugging the cactus because those are the days that build you at your core and your soul. And those are the days that prepare you for the toughest battles of your life. And too many days hugging that big, soft teddy bear will in turn make you soft and unprepared. And so, if anything, I would just encourage everybody to keep working on yourself, keep preparing yourself, because at some point, there's going to be a battle that you're going to face. And at some point, somebody's going to be watching you as you navigate your way through this battle, and it's going to show them how to navigate their way through their own battles. And so, a lot of times when we're on these warrior journeys, it's not just for us. We're setting the example for somebody else, and we're actually giving them unconscious permission to go ahead and start their journey of healing, of telling their story, of fighting their battles. And so don't be afraid of telling your story or facing the hard things, the hard parts of your story. Everybody should have a very strong relationship with their creator, with God, and their mirror. Because you could lie to God in your mirror, but they'll never lie back. They'll never lie back to you. No way. They'll always give you the truth. And when we develop the courage to look in our own mirror, and that's when the change within is possible. And from there, we can create change in our homes, in our family, in our community, in our cities, wherever we go. But that change has to start within.
thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody here for being on such an insightful thought here with Mark. Mark, thank you for all the gold nuggets you shared with us. I so appreciate everyone here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time.
If anyone would like to connect with me, you're more than welcome to schedule a free 30-minute discovery call at my website, thewarriorlifeacademy.com.
thewarriorlifeacademy.com. I'm putting that on the chat here for everybody to get.
And then scroll down to the coaching area and you can schedule a free 30-minute discovery call, and where we can learn more about each other and see if there's some way that we can help each other out. I just want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank you, Noé, for having me as your guest tonight. It has been my honor and privilege to be here.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you,
God
thank you,
bless
thank
you
you.
all. Stay strong, stay blessed, stay in the light. Like me, I'm in the dark right now, but stay in the light and always stay in your fight.
Hey, brother. Thank you so much.
Okay.
What a
Good night,
warrior.
everyone.
Thank you. Inspiring. You definitely lived up. Thank you.
We're all warriors innately. It just takes different things to bring us out of us. Don't ever forget that. God bless you all.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.